Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another news and rumor review to discuss. We got a couple of signings to talk about in this video. We got some injury updates, some waiver updates, a suspension to talk about. Plus we got a couple of trade rumors involving the Boston Bruins, the Columbus Blue Jackets, Seattle Kraken, and Colorado Avalanche. And we'll get to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Intent Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all your support. We're new to stuff. You guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so seeing all this today's video. So in today's video, we're going to start off as we usually do by talking about some signings for the past couple of days. We have 3 signings, 2 extremely important ones, so we'll get to all those signings here first. We go over to the New York Rangers where we saw one big signing, and that was with one of their trade acquisitions from in-season, and that's Will Borgen. Will Borgen, who was in the final year of his deal, a pending UFA, was scheduled to hit the free agent market over on July 1st. He was in the Kako deal, was in the final year of his 2-year deal, signs a 5-year contract extension with an AAV of $4.1 million. It's a pretty good pickup there for Borgen to get that kind of money. I think it's a little bit of an overpayment on the Rangers side of things because I think Borgen's more of a third pair guy, and even though the cap's going up, I think $4 million for a third pair defenseman is quite expensive. But still, it's interesting to pick up there for Rangers. Shesterkin has said he likes playing with him, so that's probably one of the main reasons why they signed him. I think Borgen could be a really good fit there in the New York Rangers organization. He's 28 years old, so he'll be about 33, 34 when he's ending this deal. So it's a pretty good pickup there for the Rangers. Like we said, Borgen's been in Seattle over the past couple of years, ever since being acquired in the expansion draft last year. Had a career-high 25 points, including 3 goals in 82 games with Seattle. This is career high after having 20 points in 82 games the year prior. This year, had a motor role in Seattle, wasn't working out overly well, only had 2 points in 33 games with them, was dealt to New York. He's already doubled his point total, has 2 goals and 4 points in 19 games with the Rangers so far. So Borgen's looking like a really solid third pair defenseman, sort of playing like he did earlier during his Kraken years a couple of years ago. So like I said, I think it's a really good pickup there for the Rangers, a solid third pair defenseman who can play right shot minutes. I think this could be a really good pickup there long term for the Rangers. I'm just worried it might be a little bit too much money, and I think they should have gone for like a $3.5 million deal instead of a $4.1 million deal. But still, it's an interesting pickup there as the Rangers sign Borgen for the next 5 years. So interesting note there. Then we saw the Detroit Red Wings make a smaller end deal as they signed longtime AHL player Dominik Shine, who is a 31-year-old player who had not played the NHL level, to a 2-year contract with the AAV of $775,000. So it's a low-end signing, call-up option for Red Wings if they run into some injuries. He has gone into 2 NHL games since signing this deal and has no points, so he's not going to be an overly huge, impactful player for the Red Wings, but it could be a solid depth guy and someone who they can call up if they run into some injuries. So far this year, had 32 points in 40 AHL games after having 33 points in 65 AHL games last year. So he was on pace to a career high in points at the AHL level if he had stayed there, but currently he got called up. So interesting note there. Like I said, it's not an overly big signing. I think Shine could be a solid pickup there for Red Wings, but it's not going to be an overly huge addition. But still, it's an interesting signing. And Shine did make his NHL debut a couple of days ago, so really great stuff to see. That is a really good story. And Shine signed for a couple of years now for the Red Wings. And then we saw Washington sign their starting level goaltender to a long-term extension. Thompson, who they acquired in the offseason, was in the final year of a 3-year deal with a very low AAV of $766,000. He's still on the younger side of things, but was heading to unrestricted free agency, and that's when the Capitals said they were not going to let him go. Thompson has been having himself a season, and the Capitals saw fit to sign him to a 6-year extension with an AAV of $5.85 million. So I think this is a really good deal. I think if you look at all the goaltending contracts, $5.5 to $6 million for a starter is not overly bad, and if Thompson continues to put up numbers like he is this year, that contract's going to age like fine wine. That could be a really good pickup there for the Capitals. Thompson, over the past couple of years, started to get a full-time role in Vegas. 2 years ago, had .915 save percentage and 2.65 GAA in 37 games. Last year, played 46 games, but had a little bit of worse numbers. A .908 save percentage and 2.7 GAA. Not bad numbers, but just a little bit worse than the year prior he had in Vegas. He wanted a fresh start, so the Golden Knights traded him to Washington for a couple of draft picks. So far this year, Thompson has a 2.05 GAA and a .927 save percentage in 28 games. He's been on fire. I think the Capitals have only lost like a handful of games when he was playing in net. So Thompson's been a beast for the Capitals. We'll have to see how he does in the playoffs, but I think if he continues to have regular seasons like this contract is going to age perfectly well for the Washington Capitals. So a couple of interesting signings from our past couple of days. Capitals signed Logan Thompson, who's been on a heater to start this year, to a 6-year extension. The Rangers signed in-season acquisition UFA Will Borgen to a 5-year extension, and longtime AHLer Dominik Shine sent a 3-year contract in the Detroit Red Wings organization. So some interesting signings from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. When it comes to the injury updates, we do have a couple of things to talk about here today. First, Kirill Kaprizov has undergone lower body surgery and will be out at least 4 weeks, being placed on injury reserve. So it's a bad blow. Kaprizov recently just came off of injury reserve to see him go back on injury reserve. It's an awful blow. He was going to be in the Hart conversation or the Art Ross conversation, and all these injuries have just derailed that for him. So hopefully he recovers well and he's back into the lineup before the playoffs. But that's a bad blow there for the Wild. Sean Kuraly has started to practice, but is still out with a shoulder injury, so it's a bad blow there for Utah. We saw Marino get back recently, so to see Durzi get back hopefully in the not too distant future would be good. He's practicing, which is really good news, but he's still out right now, so bad stuff there for Utah. Andrei Vasilevskiy missed Tuesday's game due to an illness in his day-to-day, so it doesn't sound like Vasilevskiy will miss too much time, but still, to see him not play on Tuesday was bad stuff there for Tampa as they wound up losing that game. Miro Heiskanen left Tuesday's game with a lower body injury and did not return. That's a bad blow there for the Stars, as Heiskanen is their top defender, so to see him go out for any sort of period of time, it's going to be an awful blow there for Dallas. So hopefully he won't take too long to recover, and we'll get back into game action not just in future. Jersey's Nico Hischier, who has missed a few games with upper body injuries, now scheduled to be out week to week. So the captain for the Devils, who's having himself a pretty good season, is going to be out for at least a couple more weeks. It's a bad blow there for New Jersey. Drew Doughty, the Kings' best defenseman, who had missed the entirety of the season due to an ankle injury that he suffered in the preseason, was activated off of long-term injury reserve and returned to game action on Wednesday. That's a big boost to the Kings D-Corps to have Doughty back into the lineup. So really great stuff there to have their top pair of defensemen back. Guhle has suffered a quadricep laceration and will be out indefinitely, so it's a horrible blow there for the Canadians. Guhle has been a really solid top 4 defenseman, so he's going to miss quite some time with his injury, so bad stuff there for the Canadians. Nick Cousins left Saturday's game with a knee injury, and he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks for the Senators, so it's a bad blow there for Ottawa. Cousins has been a really good bomb 6 forward, but to see him be out for any length of period of time, it's going to be a bad blow there for Ottawa to lose him. For Toronto, Max Pacioretty, who had missed 3 games with upper body injury, was active for injury reserve and going to return to game action on Wednesday, so it's a big boost there for the Leafs to get Pacioretty back into the lineup. While Matthew Nice, who had missed a few games now with upper body injury, was placed in injury reserve. Not too surprised there. Nice already missed a couple of games. I think he's already eligible to get back into the lineup, so hopefully he'll be able to return in the not too distant future. That's sort of just more for roster flexibility, but still good to see Pacioretty get back, and hopefully Nice won't be out for too much longer. Calgary's Kevin Ball left Saturday's game with upper body injury and is out week to week, so bad blow there for the Flames. They lose one of their solid third pair defensemen for the next couple of games. In Vancouver, Dakota Joshua, who had missed about 4 weeks with a leg injury, and Noah Juulsen, who had missed just over 2 weeks with undisclosed injury, were both active off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Wednesday, so big boost as the Canucks get a solid third pair defenseman, as well as a solid middle 6 forward back into the lineup. However, Kiefer Sherwood, who has missed a few games with undisclosed injury, was placed in injury reserve, so just like Nice, not too surprising there. He should be able to be activated not just in future, so hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. Mikael Granlund is questionable for Thursday's game with an illness, so hopefully he'll be able to play. He's a big part of that Sharks team right now, so if he's going to miss any sort of amount of game, that's going to be a really bad blow there for the Sharks. And lastly, Valeri Nichushkin will most likely be out with his lower body injury, which is dealing with and has been dealing with for the past couple of weeks, until after the Four Nations face-off. So Nichushkin's going to be out for quite some time. That's a bad blow there for the Avalanche to see Nichushkin be out for a long period of time. So hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time, but it sounds like he'll be out until at least late February at the earliest. So some interesting injury there from the past couple of days. Good to see guys like Joshua, Juulsen, Pacioretty, and Doughty all be active off of injury reserve and got back into game action. Hopefully they don't look too rusty in their returns. But bad news to see guys like Guhle, Hischier, Heiskanen, and Vasilevskiy all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time, but some interesting injury dates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a quick waiver update. We have a whole bunch of waiver updates to talk about from the past couple of days. So when you last did our video over on Tuesday, we talked about how Nicholas Aube-Kubel was on waivers, and we weren't sure if he was going to clear or not. I said there was a possibility with him being a solid bomb 6 forward, he could be claimed, but I thought with him having a $1.5 million cap, he probably would have cleared. That did indeed happen. Aube-Kubel was cleared, so he's been sent down to the minors for the Sabres. So an interesting waiver update there for Buffalo. The next day, over on Tuesday, we saw 4 players be placed on waivers. That was Cole Reinhardt in Ottawa and Brendan Saad in St. Louis being placed on waivers for the purpose of demotion. So Saad was a surprising one. I thought he would potentially be dealt, but he was placed on waivers. And with him having a $4.5 million cap, I wasn't expecting anyone to claim him. Reinhardt's actually been a decent call-up option for Ottawa, so I thought with him being on the younger side of things, I could see a team or two out there maybe try and claim him. So those two are placed on waivers, plus Milos Kelemen and Marcus Sylvegard were also placed on waivers. Sylvegard by St. Louis and Kelemen by Utah, placed on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. So both those guys having decent prospects there for those two teams. Sylvegard, I guess, doesn't seem like he's getting the best of opportunities in St. Louis, so he wanted a fresh start. And Kelemen has basically been playing in the AHL, so I guess both of those guys really want fresh starts, maybe to go over to Europe. So they both were placed on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. Not too surprising, Kelemen and Sylvegard both cleared, so they're now UFAs. They can sign wherever they want. My guess would be overseas. Saad and Reinhardt, surprisingly, both wound up clearing, so not too surprised about Saad. I'm a little bit surprised Reinhardt cleared because I thought there's a team or two out there who could have used another bottom six forward, but still, interesting to see both Saad and Reinhardt wound up clearing. Then back over on Wednesday, we saw Philip Grubauer be placed on waivers by Seattle. Kraken have had enough. The core's been their starter for quite some time now, and Grubauer's just not giving them very many good games, so they placed him on waivers for purpose of demotion. Now, Grubauer still has a couple of years left at $5.9 million, so I wasn't expecting anyone to sort of claim him, and not too surprising, he wound up clearing the next day, so not too surprising there, as I think Grubauer is a decent goaltender, but I just don't think he's worth what he's making right now. So I think there's a very good chance after the Kraken move him on waivers, if they can find a trade for him or a buyout in the offseason, I think they'll go that route, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. But Grubauer was placed on and cleared waivers. And then earlier today, we saw two players be placed on waivers. That was Brandon Saad again, but this time for the purpose of contract termination. He was placed on unconditional waivers, so it seems like Saad doesn't really want to play in the AHL, and the Blues really wanted to get out of that contract, so they worked out a mutual agreement to terminate the contract. Saad will probably get an opportunity elsewhere. Very likely chance he'll sign somewhere before the trade deadline, whereas the Blues will be able to get like $4.5 million off their cap. So I think this is a really good win-win deal. Saad can go chase a cup somewhere, and the Blues can get some cap relief. So I think that could be a really good pickup there for the Blues to have Saad's contract terminated. But he does have to clear waivers first, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. Plus, Boqvist in Florida has also been placed on waivers. His for the purpose of demotion. So I think there's a very likely chance that we will see Boqvist get demoted. There's a possibility, I think, out there that a team or two out there could use Boqvist as like a third pair defenseman, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. But those are all the waiver releases from the past couple of days. Saad is on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination, and Boqvist is on actual waivers for purpose of demotion. And then we've also seen Grubauer, Aube-Kubel, Saad earlier in the week, and Reinhardt all be placed on waivers and all cleared, with Kelemen and Sylvegard both be placed on waivers, unconditional waivers that is, and clear, and are now UFA. So some interesting waiver releases from the past couple of days. And we just got one more quick thing to talk about here, and that is the suspension. I think I forgot to mention this a couple of days ago, but after the Saturday's game between the Detroit and Tampa Bay's defenseman Emil Lilleberg was suspended 2 games for a bad hit he took to the Detroit Red Wings player JT Compher. It was a really bad hit. I think it might have been a late hit, I'm not exactly sure, but Lilleberg was suspended 2 games for the hit. I think he's already served his 2-game suspension, so he should be able to return in the not too distant future. But still, Lilleberg, who's on the younger side of things and one of their depth defensemen, did wind up serving a 2-game suspension due to the fact that he laid a bad hit on JT Compher. So some interesting suspension updates there, as Lilleberg was suspended over the past couple of days. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. Now, we've got a couple of things to talk about when it comes to trade rumors. First, with Colorado Avalanche, Craig Button was recently talking on the Donnie and Daly show, and he says do not expect the Avalanche to be done. He says that Rantanen move was a nice move for them, but he says the Avalanche GM Chris McFarland is not afraid to make some bold moves, and he says he would not be overly shocked if the Avalanche made a couple of more before the trade deadline passed. So Adam Proto of the Hockey News recently talking about this as well, identifying some options that the Avalanche could try and target, including like some center depth, a third pair defenseman, and trying to get a first-round pick because they don't have one this year. It's in Philadelphia right now. So he said that they could try and move some of their lower-end draft picks to get maybe like a first-round pick. That's not really an overly bold move, but he also says adding like a third pair defenseman or like a center depth is really good. They've already added Drury, so maybe that's all the center depth they need, but we know that Milson's not been overly well, so could they go after a guy like Brock Nelson or Ryan O'Reilly or one of those big-time centers or Mikael Granlund in the trade markets to try and bolster that center group as a possibility? When it comes to defensemen, guys like Savard's on the table, maybe Ryan Lindgren, there's potentially a guy like Power or Byram, so they could try and go after a couple of defensemen as well. So don't expect the Avalanche just moving Rantanen and now being done. Like, Nate just has been really well, so has Drury, so compared to the Avalanche, they've gotten themselves a couple of really good pieces, but Craig Button definitely thinks that they are not done by any means, and that Chris McFarland might make another bold move or two. So keep your eye on that, as there's a very likely potentiality the Avalanche make a couple more moves, and it might involve a center and maybe a defenseman. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Former NHL executive Doug MacLean was on the Kuiper and Bourne show recently talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he says that a player he thinks the Toronto Maple Leafs should go after, that could be a really good piece there for the Leafs, is Columbus Blue Jackets fourth line center Sean Kuraly. Kuraly, I think, is in the final year of his deal with AV of $2.5 million. Has been a decent fourth line, third line center for the Jackets over the past couple of years. He's also a really good penalty killer, could work really well for a team like the Leafs who needs some more added depth in the bottom six. So I can see why he would say that they should go after him. Now, Columbus is in a playoff race right now. I think they're in a playoff spot. So I don't think the Jackets will wind up moving Kuraly unless it's for a really good return if they're in a playoff spot. If they fall out a little bit, I could definitely see that happening, especially with him being a pending UFA, I think. But if they're still in a playoff race, I think it's probably less likely it happens. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. I do see the fit. I think the Leafs could definitely benefit from adding a guy like Sean Kuraly on that bottom six, either on like the third or fourth line. I think that could be a really good player, and I think he could really help in the penalty kill too. I'm just not sure with where the Jackets are now if they'd be open to moving Sean Kuraly. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but expect the Leafs to potentially have some interest in Sean Kuraly, according to Doug MacLean, who thinks that they should go after Sean Kuraly. Another thing to talk about here today is Jamie Oleksiak, one of the original Seattle Kraken players, is apparently maybe on the block. According to the fourthperiod.com, when they did their recent trade bait list, they put Jamie Oleksiak on it. So Oleksiak, I think, has 2 or 3 more years left at a $4.5 million cap. He's not an overly cheap defenseman, but he's on a big body, has some offensive upside, could play solid second pair minutes on a whole bunch of teams, and could be a really good addition for a whole bunch of playoff teams who are looking for some solid depth adds on the defense, who can play second pair minutes. Now, will the Kraken really want to move on from him? They're on the lower end side of things. I do think they will be sellers right now at this year's trade deadline. Will they move someone with term? I'm not exactly sure if they'd be willing to go that far. I think if they were to move Oleksiak, they better be getting themselves a really good return, because Oleksiak was one of the original Kraken and has been a really good Kraken player ever since being acquired in the expansion draft. So I'm not overly guaranteed that Oleksiak's going to get moved. I think guys like Tanev, Gord, and maybe to some extent Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand are more likely to get moved than Oleksiak is right now. But the 438.com obviously thinks that he could be a potential trade candidate, which is why they put him on the block. And I think there's a very lucky chance we could see Oleksiak get moved. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but definitely keep your eye on Oleksiak as a potential trade candidate for the Seattle Kraken. And lastly, going over to the Boston Bruins. Could the Boston Bruins be sellers at this year's trade deadline? According to Connor Ryan of Boston.com, he was recently talking about the Boston Bruins and said that with recent comments that Don Sweeney said they're sort of not going to be full-on buyers and they're sort of evaluating their options right now when it comes to potentially doing some things before a trade deadline. He says that there's a possibility that they may start to try and value long-term success rather than a short-term upgrade. Like, we know the Boston Bruins over the past couple of years have been a solid, dominant team. They've been adding pieces at the deadline, moving first-round picks, moving second-round picks, solid prospects, pieces to try and get themselves into the playoffs and get themselves on a deep run. But we know that the last 2 years they've been met with the Florida Panthers 2 years ago in round 1, last year in round 2, and fell to them both times. So they haven't really gone on deep playoff runs, and now their pipeline is sort of starting to weaken. So Ryan definitely thinks there's a possibility the Bruins could try and maybe move off some of their pending UFAs or players on short-term contracts to try and get some value back and get some assets in return. He mentions Trent Frederic and Morgan Geekie, who have been solid middle six forwards this year. Frederic more of a rough and tumble power forward type guy. Geekie, who's been fitting in quite well with a guy like David Pastrnak, who are both on unrestricted free agent contracts, could be very likely trade candidates. We know that Frederic could be a really hot commodity if he was potentially to be dealt. We know that Geekie, I think, could bring them in a decent return. So he mentions these guys, but he also says that established guys such as Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo, and Brad Marchand could also be potentially moved if the team decides to really focus on the future. Like, Carlo has been in the rumor mill a couple of times over the past couple of years. He's a solid top 4 defenseman. If the Bruins really want to get some really good value, I think they could try and move him. Coyle's not going to get you a whole bunch of value, so I think they'd probably rather keep him as a solid second, third line center. But a couple of teams I think out there who need some center help could try and target a guy like Coyle. When it comes to Brad Marchand, he's in the final year of a deal. He's a pending UFA, and I've seen his name start to come up a little bit. Could he go to Toronto? Could he go to a team like Vegas? I'm not exactly sure where he could go. I think the Bruins personally will wind up keeping him and signing to an extension because he's such a valuable part of that Boston Bruins team. But if they start to fall off like they're tied for a playoff spot right now, or just 1 point in, if they start to fall off a little bit and some of these other teams start to pass them, maybe there's a possibility out there we could see a Brad Marchand deal before the trade deadline happens. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. Some interesting updates there. Personally, I do think that the Bruins might try and move off some of their lower end UFAs to try and recoup some assets. I'm not sure if they'll get as big as moving off guys like Marchand and Carlo, but we know the Boston Bruins have not had an overly great season, are taking a major step back from where they were the past couple of years, and it would not be overly surprising to me if they did make some sort of move. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's all we're talking for today. I left your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Anything stick out to you? Do you think Boston winds up being a seller? And if so, could any of those guys we mentioned wind up being dealt? Do you think that the Colorado Avalanche have another bold move in them? And if so, who could they try and target? Do you think that the Jackets could move Kuraly to Toronto? And if so, what sort of a return do you think they could get? Do you think Oleksiak gets moved by Seattle? Do you think that happens? I left your guys' thoughts on all of that. Plus the signing updates, waiver updates, injury updates, and a suspension from our past couple of days. Definitely leave your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. We're going to like this video. If you'd like to remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We know to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can all discuss today's video. I also have a blog to make news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link down in the description below. And kind of see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.